Hey everyone, welcome back to week 6 of the course as we move into the rhetorical analysis section. So this week we have some resources that'll prepare you for your rhetorical analysis rough draft and then the final draft a couple weeks later. The first link is the rhetorical situation. So that describes the exigence, in other words, the purpose or motivation behind what the speaker is saying or writing. So that could be, why are they persuading us of this particular thing? The second thing is audience, being aware of who the immediate audience is, so whoever's listening or reading, and then the mediated audience, which is who is this message intended for? And finally, we have constraints. So this could be a number of things, but again, it's contextual, which is why in your rhetorical analysis, I call them context questions. So constraints could be thinking about how, based on your audience and based on your qualifications or background as a speaker, or things like timing, you have to sort of change or alter your persuasive methods in order to be successful. Okay? An example of that would be, let's say, my 3 p.m. class on Tuesday, Thursdays. I said, I want to move the class to 6 a.m. I'm an early riser. I give them all these rhetorical appeals. Well, I have a lot of constraints with that argument because it's going to be an uphill battle trying to get my audience, who I know doesn't want to A, move their class, or B, move their class that early. And those are going to be the constraints of my argument. I'll have to change how I argue and why I argue pretty drastically to try and be successfully persuasive. Take a look at the examples in the link for the handout from the University of Arkansas. And then under it is the rhetorical appeals that we've already talked about last week. Those will prepare you for in week 7 and 9, which I've already unlocked, your rhetorical analysis rough draft and final draft. Now the rhetorical analysis rough draft is the first section of your paper. So you're going to be completing the first few pages of the rhetorical analysis. So the context questions, your personal connection to what Adichie is saying about the dangers of a single story. For the final draft, you'll expand on those and talk about the main section of the essay, which is the use of appeals. How does Adichie use the 3 appeals? Are they successful? And what's their tone and style? Take a look at both of those, and please read the prompt carefully. Of course, like I said, I've unlocked them already, so if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Last thing, as always, we have our discussion post. So I'm going to have that be the last thing in our week 6, and that's going to be on the essay by Kelly Coriel on page 689. So that is the essay called All Words Matter, the manipulation behind all lives matter. This will begin having us look at arguments in the how and why with the rhetorical appeals, and also the evidence that the author is using. These are things we want to be mindful of moving forward. Again, reach out if you have any questions, and some of my other sections and some of the students have asked specifically about the reading suggestions that I did a couple weeks ago for the Women in Translation Month. So I decided to give a couple more reading recommendations for those of you who are looking for something next. And the first one here is Thomas Pynchon's Vineland. The reason why I recommend this is because there's a new movie out called One Battle After Another by Paul Thomas Anderson, starring Leonardo DiCaprio. And it's based on that book, Vineland, that was written in 1990. It's been updated for sort of modern commentary, but essentially all of the power dynamics and the political commentary stems from exactly what Pynchon is saying in that book. So if you enjoy the movie, I suggest read the book, Vineland. Other books that I'll be diving into are these 2 books of the same title, Attila. One by Alocia Coyle, which is a commentary and biographical sort of memoir about this particular novel by Javier Serena, who completed this right after his untimely, or right before, rather, his untimely death. They both work in context and intertext with each other, so it'll be an interesting read. So first read the novel and then read the sort of commentary about the novel and his life. Finally, I'll be starting a sort of behemoth-like project, but this is a fun read if you're looking for quite a bit of a literary challenge. This is a recent work that was translated from German by Max Lawton, an up-and-coming young translator, called Schadenfreude, and by Michael Lentz. As you can see, it's a pretty big read, but is a very kaleidoscopic look at the idea of what it means to write, what it means to make art, and essentially we have a character that doesn't have a name who is sort of going on this mysterious quest to figure out what he's doing in the world and then commenting on the idea of or the act of creation. So check that out if, again, you're up for quite a bit of a challenge and you're into sort of psychedelic or experimental literature. As I said earlier, please reach out if you have any questions through email. If you need to set up an office hours appointment virtually, again, reach out through my school email and make sure to use your CT State email so that your personal email doesn't go into the spam folder because of the security settings. Great job on the source evaluations. My tips on that for the rhetorical analysis that carry over: proofread carefully, make sure that you look at the prompt carefully, as well as the rubric when it's time to hand everything in. So reach out. I can't wait to read your discussion posts, and happy writing.